One of the things that's important is that we learn to work well with priesthood leaders. A lot of what we do is in relationship with bishops and stake presidents, and one of the questions that comes up often is how we can get seminary or institute agenda items into a ward council, how we can work closely with priesthood leaders for a number of issues. But do you have any advice about working more closely with priesthood leaders?
Okay, Brother Johnson, you get first.
Okay, I'll take a little crack at it. I think there are several things we can do, but one of the most important is to make sure that we realize the scope of what they're trying to accomplish. They're focusing on the young people, and we need to be careful not to get too narrow in just thinking about our program. We love those young people, they love the young people, they have the keys. We're there to really help them make progress with their young people. We're there to bless them and to support them. And every once in a while, I cringe when I hear somebody say, well, the stake president or the bishop isn't supporting us in seminary or institute the way they ought to. It just seems that that's a little backwards, and we need to be careful about it. If we can view what they're after and say, how can we help the priesthood leaders in their great responsibility with these young people, then I think that the things we come forward with will be more helpful to them, and we have the better attitude about it. If we're accurate and timely in any information we give them, whether it's reports on attendance or enrollment, it's helpful for them as they make decisions on how best to address those things.
Well, that's outstanding. That's very good counsel. I would suggest to you this, that most priesthood leaders, stake presidents and bishops and branch presidents they're really busy. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make a living, they're trying to take care of their own families, and they have this ecclesiastical responsibility for a large body of people. One of the things that you might want to think about is how could you build a relationship with a stake president or a bishop in such a way that you are giving him the benefit of some of your experience with youth in there that you're teaching. For example, suppose there's a young man that you're trying to teach in seminary, and you sense that there's some real challenges with him. Put your arm around a bishop and say, Bishop, I thought you might want to know what I'm working with as it relates to John, and I want to be sure that I'm doing all that I can do. Do you have any counsel for me? It's kind of the counsel system, and if we open up the idea that we are a resource that the bishops and stake presidents can turn to, I don't think they fully understand, to be candid with you, that the seminary and institute teachers can be a very important resource to them on an individual basis. And I would suggest that on occasion you would visit with the bishop and the stake president and say, if it would be possible, I would certainly like to attend one of the council meetings and just share with you, with the council, some of the things we're experiencing. That way you've got the whole ward council that knows what the major concerns are, and what from the seminary and institute teachers' point of view is happening in the lives of the youth. I would think most stake presidents and bishops would appreciate that, because the handbook makes it very clear that those leaders can call into a council meeting whomever they choose to call in, and maybe with our teachers and institute teachers would be a little more sensitive to that. They can build that relationship so that they can be invited into it from time to time, and that would be one thing they could do, I think.
Could I ask you the same question with regards to enrollment efforts? Well, I feel a really strong desire and feeling that we could be blessing more young people of the church with seminary and institutes. And I think if we work hand in hand or more closely with priesthood leaders in that effort, we would be more successful. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think you're dead right. Do they have access to all of the potential? So they have them by name?
Right, yes.
Well, that'd be one of the things that I would think would be a great introduction to a bishop or a stake president. Could I sit down with the council and go over with you those that are should be in seminary and those that are not, and then we could talk about any suggestions they might have as to what we could do to try to get more to come to the classes. It's a matter of kind of educating each other. So I think it's possible for a bishop, you know, he knows these young people, but does he know really how they're progressing or attending seminary? I'm not sure. So I would think build a relationship and get it where you can discuss it, and then hopefully in a ward council on occasion talk about ways that we can get those that are not participating to want to participate.
You know, I had an experience a couple of years ago serving as a bishop. I had done a lot to try to get the youth in our ward to enroll in seminary and thought I had done all that I could. And as in my assignment as an assistant administrator, I went and looked at some of the histories that year in the areas I was working with, which included the area I live in. And one of the areas had turned in their historical report with stories of experiences that young people had had in their class and how their lives had been changed by seminary and institute. It was really something that stayed, well, in fact, what happened is when I finished reading those stories, I thought about some of the young people in my ward and thought, that's what needs to happen for that young lady or that young man. And I went back and tried one more time thinking, I haven't done enough, because if that happened to some young person in this area, it can happen to these young people in my ward, and I've got to find a way to get them in class to help them have that experience. So I wonder even if in opportunities in ward councils and things to share some of those success stories, to say this is what's happening in classes, and would you like this kind of thing to happen in the lives of the young people that aren't currently enrolled. So.
Now let me bring it right down to the great responsibility, in my judgment, a teacher has. If what you are teaching young people, either early morning or release time or whenever you have access to them, if those lessons that you're teaching don't sparkle, if they aren't so good that the young people say, man, I just am not going to miss one lesson because these lessons are so exciting and I'm getting a whole new vision. If a student goes and the kids are trying to stay awake and and you're not maybe as prepared as you ought to be as a teacher, that you become your own worst enemy in trying to increase enrollment. My experience is where teachers are really good, that word gets out, and nothing's more powerful than having student A say, you know, you really ought to come to seminary because we got the greatest teacher and I'm learning so much and it's such a wonderful bunch of young people. When that starts to happen, then you get this synergism working because the teacher is prepared and the teacher sparkles in their ability to make the gospel come alive. If you're in the Book of Mormon, you're able to get those Book of Mormon prophets to almost come alive to where they actually think they're in the room. Now that takes a lot of preparation, but teachers can do that because they can call down the blessings of heaven. They can call down the power of our Heavenly Father to be that kind of a teacher, but it takes a lot of preparation spiritually to be able to teach those kinds of lessons.